So historically, there have been two kinds of smartphone purchaser. The first kind who is intimately aware of all the technical details of their smartphone, and the second kind is the kind of person who would rather have the phone work for them and would let the brand or the manufacturer make all the technical decisions and just have a good experience. Now, Apple is always catered to the latter, a kind of person who simply wants to make a safe bet and pick a phone that would work for them regardless of the choice that they make. Android's manufacturers have always targeted the former, the kind of consumer who is well aware of the decisions that they take. Now, when Nothing announced that their sort of philosophy was going to be what Apple is, but for Android smartphones, I was very ecstatic, which is why I was one of the first people to purchase a Nothing phone once, and 7 months into using it, here is my review of it. Now, normally 7 months into the life cycle of a product, I wouldn't make a review of it because it has already been so far into its life cycle that it doesn't matter. Any criticisms that I have is probably going to be fixed by the time the second device comes out, the next iteration, which wouldn't be that far removed from now because it is so long into the life cycle of this phone. But why am I bothering to make a review then? Well, think of it that I'm reviewing Nothing's policies as a whole rather than just this device. And if this device represents the interests of Nothing as a company, well, Nothing is going to have a very bright future. Talking about the build quality is something that requires perspective, which is why I'm going to be comparing it with the iPhone 13. In comparison to the iPhone 13, this is a solid, well-built, heavy phone. It feels premium in your hand, and it also feels much the same as the iPhone, which is a good thing because this is less than half the price of the iPhone 13. In fact, when you hold the device, it doesn't feel like you have nothing in your hands. It feels like you have a whole lot of something in your hands. I had to do it, come on. And I'll get it over with right off the bat. The Glyph interface is a cool gimmick. It is something that I didn't really care about because for most of the time, the phone's display is the one that is facing me, not the back panel. So I did find it useful sometimes to identify callers, but that is it. It hasn't been much used, but it was a good experience to take this out of the box, configure my ringtone on it, and watch it dynamically react to the ringtone. It is a cool experience, as I said. This device is a whole lot about experience. So yes, it was good, but it is much more of a gimmick, and I would prefer Nothing do away with this because this phone is already so distinct from the other devices on the market that they don't really need anything specific enough to act as a selling point. So while it is cool, it has turned a lot of heads. The Glyph interface is something that I don't really see myself using, and once again in 7 months I didn't use it as much. So now coming to the front, this phone houses a 6.6-inch 120Hz AMOLED panel. Now, off late, a lot of smartphones are picking a 120Hz AMOLED panel, but most manufacturers are cutting costs there as well. So they end up with an inferior panel, which is prone to developing technical issues down the line. I had the Vivo X60 Pro, and similarly, 7 months into my usage of the phone, it developed a green line throughout the length of the display, which led to me not using it. And though this is cheaper than the X60 Pro, Nothing does not seem to have cut corners when it came to the screen because once again, 7 months into the life cycle, this display is as good as new. There is no burn-in, there are no green lines, there are no black crush issues. This is a very good panel. And speaking of the colors, once again pointing to the Vivo X60 Pro, in my video of it, I had mentioned that the tuning of that display is very good because it was technically accurate. Now that is something that matters a lot to me because I edit my photos on my phones. So having it be as accurate as possible is a very important requirement of mine. Though this phone is not meant for that purpose, this display is also tuned very well. It is by no means technically accurate. It is a very stylized look, but it is one that looks very good. I can't really point out what they're doing with this like I did with the Mi 11X. I complained that the Mi 11X was tuned too warm. I can't really put a blanket term on the tuning of this display because it is sort of inconsistent, but it is also very consistent at the same time. It is a sort of weird mishmash of adjustments to a technically accurate display that works out quite well. I have consumed a lot of movies and TV shows and YouTube videos, and it has been a delight to watch it on these. It has the front-facing camera to one corner, which is sort of weird placement because almost all smartphones nowadays have moved to the center punch hole. So it is one more place where Nothing differentiates itself, and it does feel weird. Now I have used the Galaxy S10, which did have a corner punch hole, But it has been so long since I've used it that this just feels weird. Though I would argue that this is better placement for a punch hole, because this way the punch hole is in one corner. So the cutout doesn't cut out anything that is important to be displayed on the screen. Also, when you're using your phone in landscape like this to consume content, the punch hole isn't relegated to one corner that is not so vital to the information that is being presented. So it is easier to forget that it exists. But something that you won't forget about, and something that my OCD brain thanks me every day for, is the symmetric bezels all around the display. So now coming to the in-display fingerprint scanner, it is not the fastest ones. But I didn't really notice the slowness of it because the face unlock is present and it is quite fast. It is not the most secure method of unlocking your phone, but it is something. And unlike other smartphones in similar price ranges, Pixel 6a, the fingerprint scanner does actually work. If I use another finger that I haven't registered, it won't unlock. As you can see, it's not unlocking. So it is a good thing, but it is quite slow. So coming to the cameras, this is a place where the Phone 1 impressed me more than I thought it would. Now, when I bought this over the Pixel 6a, one of my biggest regrets about not going with the Pixels were the cameras. How could I not choose the Pixel for the camera? But I was blown away by the results every time. I have the iPhone 13 mini, I had the Mi 11X, I had the Vivo X60 Pro with the Z's camera, but I chose to shoot photos with this every time I had this on hand. The colors, the dynamic range, and the way the sharpness is applied to the photos are so good. They are just how I want my photos to be. I don't need to edit my photos as much because these just look so perfect. And a good thing is, even the Vivo X60 Pro cheaped out on its ultra-wide, where the ultra-wide was significantly softer and had less low-light performance than the main sensor. But with this, the ultra-wide performs just as good as the main camera, just like how it is with the iPhones. But now you have 48 megapixels. Now, video is definitely not this phone's strong suit. It does have a dedicated video recording indicator, so I assumed that Nothing paid a lot of effort into the video side of things, but it is perfectly average. It mimics the iPhone when it comes to video in a lot of places, when it comes to auto exposure, the colors that it produces, but it simply cannot match the iPhone's dynamic range and its autofocus capabilities. With this having a lot of focus issues, the large sensor size also plays a part in it, but the autofocus is very spotty in video and it often chooses to focus on subjects that are close by rather than subjects that are bigger in the frame. So the autofocus needs a bit work, in video at least, but otherwise this is a very good camera. It's not the best, but it is good. Now coming to software, this runs Nothing OS, which is Nothing's skin of Android, and I wouldn't call it a skin, it's more like flavor because it is very minimal. It does resemble stock Android in many places and is super smooth. Nothing hasn't received its Android 13 update yet. I also haven't flashed the beta version also of it. I'm still rocking the 1.1.7 OS version of the OS, and it has been good. There have been a few bugs relating to the fingerprint scanner's activation inside banking applications like GPay and HDFC Bank's applications, but otherwise there haven't been any bugs. It has been very smooth, it has been very consistent, and is a very good UI, reminiscent to the old Oxygen OS, which is a very good thing because people loved Oxygen OS. So coming to the specifications at last, because once again, as I mentioned, this is a phone that is catered for people who wants to make safe bets. It is not for the kind of person who wants to obsess over benchmark results, which is why I'm not going to give you any benchmark results here. I'm just going to be giving you my opinions about it. So this rocks the Snapdragon 778G, and I have gone with the 12GB RAM variant of the phone. And I have done anything and everything on this phone. I have run a PS2 emulator, the PS2 being the home console from 20 years ago, and it is able to run those games at twice the native resolution and still achieves 100% game speed. And I've also exported a large batch of raw files from Adobe Lightroom, and I've also been browsing Twitter, Reddit, Instagram, and all those daily use applications, and this phone does not break a sweat, or rather I should say nothing slows down the Nothing Phone 1. And that is good considering that this is not packing the flagship hardware that its price would suggest. Now the only place where you can notice the cutbacks when it comes to the processor is the camera, because the photos you take, it does take quite a while for them to get processed, and the video recording, the shutter lag for video recording is also significantly higher than other smartphones, but that is the only place where you can feel the lack of performance. Otherwise, this phone is very fast, very smooth, and it cruises through any task effortlessly. So coming to the battery life, this phone easily lasts me a day and a half on light usage, that is just social media consumption, and is able to last an entire day with heavy usage with a lot of gaming, navigation, camera usage, and also Spotify playback on Bluetooth headphones thrown in all day long. And even though it packs a 4500 mAh battery, it doesn't feel hefty or heavy. So I have covered everything from the build quality to the display to the camera to the performance to the battery life. And in all of these aspects, this phone is a solid 8. It is the jack of all trades, master of none. And as the saying goes, jack of all trades, master of none, but better than a master of one. And that is exactly what Nothing wanted this phone to be. An effortless experience, a safe bet. Regardless of your personal needs from a smartphone, this is going to be good for you. This is a very well-rounded phone, and as the video title suggests, it's different than the rest. There hasn't been such a well-rounded smartphone in quite a long time in this budget, and it is a damn good phone at that.